Welcome, everyone. Happy to have you here for the second to last one. I did add one more date. I'm not sure if anyone will show up, but whatever. I'll be here. Any of you can make it. Because I know school's getting back in session and in-service days, and then you're off to the races with the new school year. But I wanted to make sure we gave justice to the last chapters and didn't kind of rush through some. So tonight we planned on talking about chapters 12 and 13. So 12 being the building community in the classroom and relationships, and then the chapter 13 being the multiple representations and connecting those representations. So loved these chapters. I had hoped that Kit Golan would come back tonight. I'm not sure if they'll be able to join us tonight. I did reach out to them and say, hey, I know you were here last week, but this week is where they are mentioned in the book. So I would love to have them here and be able to share with us. I mean, it was so cool in reading the book to see that people that I have known in the math ed community are mentioned in the book, and they came to last week's meeting, which was awesome. And then also I wanted to mention that Dr. Kara M, that also Rachel mentions in the book, she's going to be speaking at our New England conference as well. I can't tell you, so many people that are in this book are going to be at the New England Math Conference. You all have to come. It's going to be so incredible. But I was like, it's such a small world. I mean, I'm sure. I don't know if Rachel may have reached out to them and said. I mean, I know Kit and Shelby Strong. They work at Lesley, Massachusetts, Lesley University. But Dr. Kara M, I didn't realize was relatively local as well, and she had applied to be a group speaker, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have her coming too. So, and then of course, it also was mentioned in this chapter 13 of Amy Lucenta and Grace Kalamanek's work. And they're both speaking at our conference as well. So it's going to be an amazing, amazing conference. But all right, let me just check. Oh my gosh, Kathleen, your college move-in for your 18-year-old. I remember those years. Boy, those are hard years of moving them off to college. Whether it was I have two kids, so whether it was the first kid or the last kid, it was just brutal to have them be going off and live their best life, but without us. But what an exciting time period for their lives, and seeing them, independent and off to college. But it is such a sadness when you can't share your space with your favorite people in the world. And now my kids moved to Wisconsin, crying out loud. Hence the barking dog. He's filled some wonderful holes in our heart for sure. Oh gosh, two the same week. Oh gosh, Kathleen. Okay, so glad to have all of you here. Let me just get my screen shared. And just as a reminder, we're doing chapters 12 and 13. Is the right screen showing? I don't have the green around it. You're seeing my title screen here. Thank you. Thank you very much. And just a reminder, of course, that this is a zero judgment zone. We're going to protect each other in our safe space, and whatever is said in the small group stays in the small groups off camera. So feel comfortable. Okay, so tonight, if you could rename yourselves with your first name at least, the role that you have, the grade levels you work with, and your pronouns, if you would. And then just a reminder that our last meeting will be the Monday, August 19th. I'm going to be flying to Florida, hopefully tomorrow, with Hurricane Debbie out there causing weather problems. But yes, I know, Laura, look at your face. Visiting my mom and dad for the week. So I'll be down visiting my parents. But the Monday the 19th, we'll meet on the last two chapters of assessment, and then IEP goals changing. So just a reminder of that. And tonight we're going to have the two chapters we'll talk about. Again, we'll do the small group time, and then we'll come back out. That's recorded for those that can't make it, to have some discussion of the same topics. And if you happen to be in group 1 to 4, I mean, maybe even just be group 1 and 2. There aren't too many of us tonight. But the first couple of groups, if you would be willing to share something, and then I'd love to have a conversation about that with all of us. And then the same thing with the connecting multiple representations. So that is the goal of the night. I'm going to bring us into this Rethinking interactive file. I'm going to get that put in the chat bar for you, this link. And I'm keeping all the previous links. This is the second one that I did because I learned from Norma about the Post-it notes, and you had requested that. So I have two files, the original one without the Post-it notes, and then this is the one that has the Post-it note format. And so you can go right into that file. And then if any of you within that small group are willing to take notes for your group, so we can kind of be sharing with each other. And you'll see in this file that I still have in there the previous 2 weeks of previous two chats and the notes. So those are there for all of us to go back to whenever you want to read some more ideas. And so I have, as usual in this file, the link to the Padlet is always there. I have added some resources to the chapters 12 and 13 chapters. I put links to the QR code she had in the book of her website on the instructional routines. I did a link to Grace Kelmanek and Amy Lucenta. Together, they have a website of the Foster Math Practices. I put some great videos on there. Love one by Mike Flynn. It is a must-see, 8 minutes long of pure gold about connecting representations. These three different islands, concrete, pictorial, abstract, and how we're building bridges. It's not just you're in this black and white dull zone if you're concrete pictorial and we only honor the abstract, right? It's like, no, making connections between all of them. So I have that on there for you as well. And then just a reminder in the small group, if this happens to be your first time, then I certainly welcome you. But the person who taught the longest, you do not have to, but I'd ask if you would be the one who can kind of facilitate the discussion, get everyone talking. And if you could have one person, that's willing to talk for the group of what you shared about, and then all of us can talk and add on to your thoughts. We will use the questions at the end of the chapters and take any notes that you want to. So I put the questions from the chapters right here in this slide deck for us. Again, if any of you are coming in now, haven't gotten that link, this is the interactive file for us. And yeah, I'll bring it back out in about 12 minutes or so, and we'll chat about the chapter 12, about the relationships and community. Is there anything anyone can think of that I have forgotten to say? Okay, so I'm going to get the breakout groups open.
Did you see how much time is in each breakout room?
Yeah, I'll do about 12 minutes since you're
Okay.
being new to each other, kind of introduce yourselves a little bit, and then we can get into the heart of the building relationships and building community in the classroom, right? So all those topics. All right, so here comes, there are 3 breakout groups. So all 3 groups, be prepared to say something. All righty, it's opening up, gonna invite you in. All right. So I just want to show for a second the Padlet and the chapter 12. I did put on here a video called My Favorite No Routine. So as part of this chapter about it's okay to make mistakes, having that safe environment. So many of the kids that were interviewed had said they felt like this classroom was different than others they had had because number one, they were given time to think, but they also felt like it was safe. And not that the other teachers that they had, you know, were awful about making mistakes, but the nonverbal things that this teacher did in her classroom send a message that the kids can be safe and feel comfortable. And that it was amazing. But so I remember there was being a video of Leah Alcala about this, my favorite no as a routine. I also included in this videos of Joe Bowler's site. I love her videos for teachers and the kids on these messages that making mistakes is valuable and the separation of the fact that you have to be fast at math to be considered good at math. That's not true, right? So to have these videos to show our kids, if you are a primary school teacher or any, if you're just a kid at heart, this one of the Sesame Street, The Power
Yeah.
of Yet, an awesome video, just the power of yet and how he always, in all my consulting work, if anyone says something, well, my kids can't, I always just yet, like yet, that mindset of that yet. And then even some more that were made for specifically for the kids, these cute, like these grad students who are like superheroes in the videos, but they're so well done and such great messages from Joe Bowler on the YouTube site. So I did want to mention that I had added those to the Padlet links. And I also just to begin, I know the questions that she had in the chapter focused on like teaching fractions and were there any times building relationships with kids as well. But I also want to make sure I brought up, I loved these 3 things that she had said about what she provided in her classroom that made a difference for these kids. So the fact that she provided them time and space to do the math thinking. And I know it's no fault of anyone when our administration is down our backs to have a pacing guide and get through these lessons and you're just feeling crunched for time. but that's when I would want to have a whole big conversation with the administration of like, these are kids and it was so fascinating about their emotional feelings towards math affecting their engagement and their achievement. When they like it, they're actually more likely to achieve more. And that time and space is so important for so many kids. And the messages of sending that reframes the thinking about what is math, those rather than being fast versus slow and right and wrong, that how do we redefine what it means to be good at math? Um, and then that just her communication intentionally and non-verbally, that they were a community working together, making sense together, providing choice. That was an interesting piece too, of providing choice of who they worked with, because that definitely rubs up against like busy thinking classrooms, random groups, but I can see the safety for a student who has particular anxiety. And wasn't that fascinating that the students that have learning disabilities have anxiety at twice the rate of the regular population? Like, holy cow. And as someone that does suffer from anxiety, and I have since my early 20s, there is an element of anxiety that gets raised when you're put in situations that require speed or that require you to work with people that you're not familiar with, so you don't feel safe. So I would understand the students who have some social anxiety of what it would be to be randomly put with people. But I also see the benefit of, for a community of learners learning from each other, to realize, oh, I can work with anyone in here. We're all, but because how often do the kids get a chance to work together to learn about each other? So it's like a funny balance to have to navigate with your kids each year and what feels safe. And I think the important thing is talking to the kids, finding out what their thoughts are, and maybe that will change over time the more safe they feel. So, okay, so any of those topics are fair game to chat about. If anyone is willing to kind of share about anything you talked about in relation to this building community and relationships. For
I
you,
can
is
share
there?
about a I can share about a kid that I had this year. It really made me think about relationship. It was a first grader that I worked with. I'm an interventionist. It was her first year with me. Is has a has a medical condition, is pretty much selective mute and anxiety, and we're pretty sure autistic. Female, so presents differently than a male, and came in this year really presented as doing nothing, not knowing anything. And as I really worked over the course of the year with the student, uh, to really learn what she knows and to get her to open up, to learn that pretty early on in the year that she does know her numbers to 20, because we thought coming in she didn't even know her numbers to 20. She wasn't showing anything in class. Wouldn't just sit and complete a page that had like, here's 4 pictures, count the how many dogs and write the number. And really showing how relationship with her and then the assistant that I have in my room, both of us just worked so hard to, by the end of the year, she was by choice coming into my room every day during lunch instead of going to the cafeteria, and would talk up a storm. And every day walked in asking me the most randomest of questions, for anything from adoption to being an astronaut. And I, through that, got to see so much math out of her, to really seeing that she was working pretty much at grade level, but you would never know if there wasn't the relationship built.
Mhm. Yeah, so powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Cindy.
Okay,
I
I'll
have a
talk for our group.
Oh,
It
go
was
ahead.
sorry, it was group 2, and I took the notes, but I do want to tell you that with the 4 of us, we have about 110 years of teaching experience with 4 people.
That's
Yeah, just
awesome.
saying.
That's awesome.
I always count the number.
Every
I always
week you
want
do
to know
that, I
that.
know.
And I put it in on the little bar. So, okay, we talked a lot about pages 201, 202, and 205.
Mm,
201 was all about the time and space for mathematical thinking, that mistakes are how we learn, and math may take more time. P.S. We have our meet and greet tomorrow, and I might just make that on a sign and stick it on my desk, because I'm sharing a room with a 4th grade teacher and it's just my little space, but I want parents to know that. And
mhm,
also, we loved how the teacher was like, "Oh, share your change in thinking." Because I mean, I say to kids all the time, "You can revise your thinking; it's okay." But to have the teacher
say to the kid, "Ooh, can you share your change in your thinking of what happened?" And then on 202, share your favorite mistake of the day. And then also on 205, there were a lot of things, but like watch our nonverbal cues was a huge thing. And what does it mean to be good at math? And the little graphic of the process of mathematical identity. And stop saying these kids can't think, because they can.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Did I get a little passionate about that? Yes. Yes, I did. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura.
Annalise, I have a question. Because you kind of mentioned it, and I know you know all of the resources out there. Do you know of
I
any
wouldn't say
place,
all, but I know many.
any of the a repository of like the best mistakes for different, I don't know, for equivalent fractions, for adding fractions with mixed denominators, or whatever the topic is? Do you know of any place where there's a whole collection of best mistakes?
That's a good question. I don't know offhand.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
don't know off.
offhand either, but Lisa, what series do you use? What's your
Everyday math.
okay? Because in ours, we use Envision, but they have like sometimes they have worked examples where a kid has done something wrong, like in the TE on the bottom part. Did you look in your TE and see if they have something like on the peripheral part?
It's not really written that way.
Okay.
Occasionally you'll see something like that, and they will have, in some of the assessments, it'll have examples of how a kid did it wrong and the kids have to correct it. I
Yeah.
just would like to use it as a teaching tool more often.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But so I think that the like those worked examples, I don't know if there's a book on them they're in curriculum, but the idea that the students can be looking at two examples and see either the commonalities, what the differences are, but also how one could be right, one could be wrong, or both could be right, but yet there's something different about them, or I'm just thinking about the student work themselves. Oh, there we go. Thank you, TJ. He linked a book on for fractions. Oh, perfect for fractions for the chapter as well on student misconceptions and errors. Thank you, TJ. Awesome. So for fractions for sure. But I'm wondering about, I mean, there's a value to our own students, like what mistakes our own students make. And if you were to begin to collect those, it's not necessarily from the current year of students you have, but they're actual mistakes that your students have made. If you begin kind of collecting snapshots of some of those, that could be a really valuable resource as well.
In our group, we were talking about what the struggle with fractions. Sorry, I'm just finishing up my dinner, so I have my camera off. Because you do not want to see me chewing. Um, but I think the biggest struggle is that almost everyone I know who's old enough to be a teacher was taught fractions in a way that we didn't make sense of it. We were taught rules, we were taught procedures, we found answers. And it's really hard, I think, fractions more than any other content. It's really hard to teach it where you are developing understanding with students when you don't necessarily understand it yourself and like, wait, I've got to do this procedure, this like flip and, this butterfly method, which is so silly. And so we were talking a little bit in ours that like sometimes the problems and the models that are provided by programs actually develop misconceptions. One of that book I just shared is by from Vermont researchers that I took their course they did called OGAP. And one of the things they found was when they gave students different types of number lines rather than just only giving them number lines 0 to 1, well, lo and behold, many students actually thought fractions were less than 0. So if you have a program or a resource that only shows number lines from 0 to 1, great, they can probably always place a half on that number line. But unless you know that that's something students do, then you wouldn't necessarily provide students with a 0 to 2 or a -1 to 1. And so those are the kind of things that we as teachers have to be aware of. And if we're not aware of, we can't really address with a program. like any program. No program is perfect, obviously, but no program, I'm telling, we've done deep depth and dives. No program is really good at teaching fractions that I'm aware of.
And it's so multifaceted. I know my own thinking of a fraction was just part of a whole. So my first lesson of fractions in my fifth grade classroom was like a worksheet from the textbook that had a variety of shapes already partitioned into equal sized pieces. So all the kids had to do was count the shaded pieces and count the pieces and all. And I'm like, we're on the road to fraction understanding. And I'm like, and now I'm like, I had no idea what I didn't know about fractions. There's a whole world of understanding about it. And when I do, there's an activity at a professional learning thing I was at. I remember that activity of sharing candy bars among different kinds of people. So it was like, all right, there are 2 candy bars and 3 people. How many does each person get? And you go through all this thinking, and then there are 3 people. There are 3 candy bars and 4 people, and it's like it's 3/4. They get 3/4. Like, how have I become at that point mid-30s and never have known that before? That a fraction is division, like 3 divided by 4. It's crazy. So yeah, no, absolutely. So thank you for sharing that book, TJ. That's awesome. Um, great resource for us for sure. And also Stephanie mentioned that Knowledge Hook has a misconception chart outlining what you might see students do and then what you can do as a next step. So that's awesome resource as well. So thank you all for sharing. We are all better together than we are by ourselves. So that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Was there anything else anyone else wanted to mention that they had discussed about this chapter of building community, building relationships? All right. So then we're moving on. I'm sorry.
I was just going to
Go
say
ahead, Jane.
we did make note of the nonverbal cues, and just I think maybe she mentioned that already, but how important that is, because they get so much from anything. It's really hard to have that poker face, and you just have to be really careful with that. And I threw a book in the chat just now, and it's a book for us, like math people. And it talks about, she did mention this one. It gave me so much insight into what fractions really are, because really they're not just one thing or another, right? Operators, they're ratios, they're scaling, right? So they're a number on a specific position on a number line. So did I send that message to everyone? I think I did. Yeah.
I think so. Yep.
Course recently. Yeah. An amazing book. Definitely.
Nice.
If you want to know more as an adult or share with other adults, Pam Harris talks about this book a lot too. And
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
number.
I'll add that to our Padlet for chapter 12. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Annalise, I also threw in the chat. So I have a podcast with my friend Karina, and we talked about number sense routines back in like episode 30, whatever. But we made these slides, and the one that I put in there was called Where on the Number Line. And honestly, even if it just inspires you to make your own, so that we can like go beyond the 0 to 1, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right. And there's one more thing that I thought of that it mentioned about building community relationships. No, it's gone. 55-year-old brain is not pretty. Goes right out the door. All right. So let's go on to the next chapter about connecting representations. And loved this one. And you may have seen that last week Kit Nolan was here, and I didn't think to mention last week when he goes by they go by both he and they pronouns, so go back and forth. But Rachel decided to name them as them in her chapter. But they were here last week together with Rachel, and I didn't think to mention that that they are mentioned in the book. So I did reach out to them today to ask if they were coming tonight, but they weren't available. They thought they might pop in. They may try to, but I don't know if they will. But it would have been great to have him here for sure, or them here. Okay. So let me get you back into the breakout rooms, and this is going to be now about focusing on the yep, brain right out the window. Chapter 13. Oh, the representations. Thank you. Connecting representations. So this chapter about connecting representations, I just wanted to kind of bring us back for a moment about this Lesh translation model, this 5 different representations, right? So I was very, very familiar with concrete, pictorial, abstract, right? Like, but I also very familiar with contextual in terms of problem solving and making it realistic. But the verbal piece, I don't think I had been as strong in thinking about connecting the verbal, like what we're saying in the words that connect to everything else. So love that graphic and these all those arrows, right? It's not just a student is in concrete and then they're in pictorial and then they're in abstract. And then people have misinterpreted that, where I've seen like classrooms where this group is concrete and this group is now pictorial. It's like, holy cow, that's not what it was meant by that, right? So so I like this visual image to kind of remember the 5 representations and how we can bring out those connections between each of them. I really liked this framework of the was recommended best practices for our multi-language learners and our students with disabilities of that authentic contexts. I mean, I think there's a comic about a kid with like a shopping cart full of cantaloupes. It's like only in math would there be a story problem about buying 62 cantaloupes and no one questions it, right? Like that's not an authentic situation in the kids' lives, nor things that they care about. So the more we can build the relationships with the kids and find out what they are interested in, like one of those students was interested in space, like you might make up a story problem about space and you've got their attention already a little bit, right? So and then there's this multimodality, the idea that our kids can have a choice in how they show it and no one way is deemed better than another, that the overarching goal isn't to get everyone to the abstract. The overall goal is everyone's problem solving, and that you can be approaching it in a way that makes sense for you. I do hear way too many teachers in my consulting work, and I'm K-5 focused, who don't have manipulatives out in their classroom. And I'll ask them why, and they'll say, well, it's just a hot mess. The kids end up eating them or they're throwing them. It's just not worth it to get it out. And my heart aches because there are kids that would prefer to enter a task concretely. It doesn't make them less of a math student if they're doing that. So the opportunity isn't even there for them. So I always share that I want every student within arm's reach to have a baggie of manipulatives. And so it's not, if you need them, go get them. It's like, it's right there within arm's reach. All kids, all grade levels at all times. It's just a tool that's there. And we just want to help them connect representation so they can build it. Now let's connect it to a picture and we can connect it to an abstract. So we're not leaving it in one modality. But the idea also of sharing, of course, the kids sharing these variety of ways that they're getting their answers, to value that process over the getting the answer is just so crucial. And a big part of this chapter also are those language, right? Those sentence stems that get kids begin to share their thinking, and that provides that structure for them. And how we have those scaffolds to help support the abstract thinking. I know in this chapter with the double number line and about the algebraic ways, if any of you have ever seen Steve Wyborney's Splat, it is a phenomenal visual way to do algebraic thinking. When you have 2 splats and some extra circles and the total is 14 and you're figuring out how much must be under each splat if they're covering the same number of dots, like you're doing 2x plus 6 equals 14, like you're doing an algebraic equation. And then so to be able to provide opportunities and make it accessible. That's a big word, I think, of this whole book, of that accessibility for all students, right? So love that thinking. I did want to show you also that on the column of our chapter 13, I did put on here a link that she put, Rachel Lambert, in the book. This is her section of her website about the online teaching practice. That's what the QR code was to that link. Also, I connected us to the website that she mentioned in the chapter, that Grace and Amy's work. They're phenomenal. I love learning from the two of them, and their books are phenomenal about practicing the practices, the math practices. They're just phenomenal, brilliant. And here's that video that I really think that everyone needs to see. Parents, administration, everyone needs to see this video of redefining what it means to be good at math. Mike Flynn has these different islands, and he talks about, concrete island and pictorial island and then abstract island, as if being on abstract island is the goal, and then the concrete and pictorial like turn black and white like haunted Halloween, like rawr, as opposed to them all being vibrant, and we're building bridges between them, and it helps students who are getting correct answers quickly right now. That's the way they're able to do it. It benefits them to go back and have the other foundational pieces as well, and those connections. But it also provides the opportunity for students who are thinking more concretely to connect those also, like it's just this bridge building. So love that video. It's an 8-minute video, but I absolutely love that. All right. So what kind of thoughts and things are you discussing in your groups about this multi-representations and connecting them together, and what Kit was doing in the classroom with the students?
I'll share just one thing. We talked a lot about the double number line, and we had an in-depth conversation about number lines in general and how useful they are in the open number line. I think in the group we hadn't necessarily seen it used that way, like with the algebraic reasoning. I think some folks had thought of it that way. I had never seen it that way, but that was interesting to me. And we talked a lot about some of those prerequisite algebraic reasoning skills and whether we're spending enough time on them in like especially like equality, really understanding quality. We kind of address it a little bit and kind of assume that students really understand it. I don't know if anybody wants to add. We talked a lot about teacher training as well, and understanding the mathematics that they're teaching, because it's one of the chapter questions is, what would you ask Kit? And one of the things I would ask him is like, how long did it take them to learn to teach this way, right? Like what motivated him to be able to think so deeply? But I think he's thinking very deeply about the mathematics.
Absolutely.
To be able to facilitate that kind of student discussion with kind of abstract, semi-abstract, like, models. Did I capture that? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was working in a school district, and I've been there all year long, going several times during the year, working just with a certain grade level of people. And we're doing all different multiplication strategies and modeling. So area models and whatnot, but various flexible multiplication strategies that weren't the algorithm. And double and halving, I just love. But I remember a moment where one of the teachers, it was spring, and one of the teachers actually stopped and said, wait, like we have to own these before we help the kids own them. It was like a light bulb moment. And I had been there all year, like for a couple of years, I've worked in that district. And just that light bulb moment of, oh, have to understand and own these strategies. It's not just like, I'm just gonna teach them all, whatever sticks to the wall, use the one you like, kids. But it's like actually owning ourselves so that we can facilitate these journeys of the kids. And so many, I know, I'll speak for myself. My undergraduate degree is in sociology, but I did take many math classes. I thought I might be a math major. But once I discovered sociology and the passion I felt for that subject, it was nothing compared to the college math classes I was taking. It didn't inspire me in that way. But then my graduate program, I had only one class to take of math. It was math and literature. So I did not come out certified K-8 knowing any more how a kindergartner learns and develops math than an 8th grader. But I am certified to walk into any of those classrooms and be their teacher, right? So it's no fault of anybody when we haven't had the training ourselves. But it's such an important thing for the math PD that it covers the content. It's not just the pedagogical moves. It's the content. So important. Yeah.
I have to disagree, Annalise. I think it's the fault of the university system. I don't think because I got my master's degree and didn't take one course on how to teach math. Everything I've learned about teaching math has been from I've learned in schools.
Right.
And I think you should have to know something. I mean, I was responsible for a whole caseload of kiddos. That's like, I feel awful for those kids, I shouldn't have been teaching. at that time until I knew better.
Yeah, right, I know it. But I just meant that when the teachers that I meet in the consulting, like they feel like, oh my gosh, I've done this all wrong. I'm stupid, right? And it's like I don't want people to feel that way because if you've not been exposed to it, if you've never seen a double and having strategy or a constant different strategy that when you know about it, it's life changing. If you haven't seen it, you don't, it's not assumed that you must know it, which is why I think a lot of addition and subtraction algorithm happening like in grades 1 and 2, even though it's a fourth grade standard, because when I ask teachers to do 52 minus 38, so often they're just doing the algorithm. And I'm like, is there any other way you can do it? And they're like, and then I say, well, not yet. We're going to go through some other ways of thinking about it. So and I went through it myself. I only knew the algorithm. I didn't do it any other ways with my fifth grade students. I didn't know anything yet. So yeah, it's the more we can spread the word of this flexible thinking. It's not that it's new, but I mean, it's surprising to me how often I meet people that are doing the traditional ways because they haven't yet seen anything different. And I've been immersed in this world for so long, you kind of lose that sense of like, oh, wait, like others haven't seen this yet. I'm the first one to even mention this to people. So, but I agree. I think that the college training programs is so, oh, that's true. And that job security is a good idea. But I know I taught some Methodist classes to the college students when I was living in the North Country, and I had them all read math running records, and I brought students in. They were kids of teachers and the school friends of mine. They brought the kids in, and then my college students interviewed kids about their thinking of the math that fluency, and then I had games able to go home that the kids needed. Like that I think is invaluable experience for our pre-service teachers to be able to know about the thinking of kids, even on just basic facts of those early learning trajectories. And that was when I discovered math running records on Dr. Nikki's work. I had not known about learning trajectories or how do I share what I'm learning with my colleagues. And like, wait, if I train people how to do a math running record, I'm teaching them about early numeracy and all the research behind that. Plus, we're getting the authentic information of the kids' thinking. It's like a win-win, but yeah, exactly. And I absolutely live by that, TJ, about when we know better, we do better, right? Dr. Maya Angelou's like that's how I live my life every day. I'm learning more, right? So, oh, Maggie, yeah, I'll give you the link to my Padlet. I facilitate the Facebook group Math Running Records, and I'll focus on Dr. Nikki's work and this fact fluency assessment. In fact, we're going to be doing a cohort again this year. So Dr. Nikki and I have, for the last 3 years, once a month met with teams of people from districts. It is a free professional development opportunity. We meet for about an hour and a half each month, and we share about the different operations and the math running record and tons of resources. Dr. Nikki is among the most generous people I've ever met. She just gives away all kinds of things, and she's amazing and brilliant and kind and generous. But we're going to be opening up. I have yet to do it, but I need to do it of posting in the Facebook group for the applications for the new cohort. So if you have any people in your school that want to join it, it's once a month, about 90 minutes. It's free PD from the two of us. But it's okay, Kathleen, great to see you. Thank you so much. But let me give you the Padlet to that. And on the Padlet, you'll find links to everything you need, videos of me giving math running records and Facebook group and her site called mathrunningrecords.com, which is where you can get them. They're a free protocol. So math and then in the Facebook group is where I provide advice. So any kind of questions of anyone having them as they're doing them, I'm always in that group providing giving advice and stuff. But I will be posting in that group soon about how you can join the cohort if you'd like to join the cohort. So so I love this chapter. I love the multiple representations, the concrete, the pictorial, the abstract, linking them together. I love the idea of representations and which ones connect together. I really like that idea. I have not gotten yet into read. I'm very good about buying books. I'm not very good about reading the books. So I have Amy Losenta and Grace Kellerman's books, and they're just brilliant. And I take any opportunity to learn from them, but I have yet opened the chapter to their books to get the richest. Laura, you have your own book supplier. Her mother has her own book of the month club. Her mother supplies her with all her books.
I actually didn't do that this year because I was like, I have to stop. Like, I have to stop.
No,
I've got
stop the
so many.
madness.
Whew.
Is there anything anyone wanted to share about the chapter on multiple representations? All right. I do want to ask a favor for any of you who are willing to hang out for a minute.
Share
One of
one.
our members.
Sorry,
I'm sorry. What?
I was. Can I just share one thing about from the chapter?
Please,
I was
please.
trying to give space for someone else to talk because I talk so much and I try to be really cognizant of it. So I apologize in advance. But one of the things that I mean, I think this is an amazing book. I think I said it last time. I think it's the first book that has the potential to bring together general education and special education teachers, like the first resource I've seen. Um, However, I do think that there are places as I read where I'm like, oh, I wish she had just gone here. And in this chapter, I feel like there was a missed opportunity to connect to the 5 practices for orchestrating productive math discussions. I just felt like it was like glaringly missing. And I didn't, I would love to have a conversation with Rachel about why is she not aware of it? Did she not value
Mhm,
that? I don't know. Can only
mhm.
check. So that was my one kind of thought as I read this chapter because I agree with you. It's an amazing topic, and and of course she has to keep it concise, but I felt like she could have
Mhm.
at least included something about that. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly, yeah, certainly wondering whether she's even aware of that. I know there are times that I learn things and I'm like, how did I not know that? Right? How did I not know that that book existed or whatever? And it's just our own journeys of what we go through and we just didn't even know about it. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I certainly doubt there's any deliberate exclusion of it if she were to have known. I mean, the math practices, Peg Smith. I've forgotten the other, isn't there another author as well? I'm sorry to not forget, but Peg Smith, I know.
Mary K. Stein.
Thank you, Mary Kay Stein. So Stein and Smith, right? Exactly. That idea of anticipating student strategies. What do we think the kids might be coming up with, and then being able to select and sequence what we're seeing to show that progression, and then connecting as well. So it just absolutely meshes so perfectly. So if you haven't heard of that book, that's another one to add to your collection of books of must-read books for sure. Um, One of our members, Dawn, couldn't be here tonight, and she had asked if I could ask these 2 questions. I was curious if any of you have any thoughts on either of these 2 questions that she had.
Okay, well, I'll tackle the very first one. I mean, just the nodding, or the, the excitement that you get, like, oh my God, yeah, they got it right, like, without even saying anything, like that. Uh huh. Not that I've ever done that in my whole teaching career.
I think, like many things in teaching, this takes practice. And often when people observe me teaching, they're like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, I've been doing it for a really long time. So it's not like I rolled out of the bed and just started doing that this morning." For me, my go-to is, "You're ever thinking really hard about this?" That's kind of my go-to response to students because it doesn't say anything about the correctness of their solution, but it comments on their thinking and their effort. So that's my go-to.
Mm, nice. I know for a while I would say, I need you to show your work because there were some kids who just might just put an answer on a paper and I need you to show me your work. But I think everyone has a visceral reaction to that now of like, no, like particularly if students think that math's about getting right answers, I've given you the answer. So why do I have to show you my work? Right. So I've shifted my phrase now to be, I need you to make your thinking visible to me. I can't be in your brain to know what it was. And I want to make sure too that there are times students will just know answers. So if I'm doing a math learning record, asking them about a basic fact, they may just know 8 times 6 is 48. There may not be any thinking that they did. And so for the kids that have the answer correctly, I might ask them, so how would you help a friend who doesn't know it? So I can find out if they know any other like multiplicative relationships and strategies versus I tell them to go to the dollar store and get some flashcards and just practice, which is what the kids tell me who have memorized the facts. Right. I want the kids to be able to say, well, is there a fact nearby that you know? Right. So prompting for those kind of things. For sure. And then does that make your thinking visible to me where I'm not telling them whether it's right or wrong? I just do know how did you get to your answer? Because I've got to figure out how they got to that answer in order to know how I can help them as well. So
A conversation that we've been having is around that and showing your thinking and making your thinking visible. You know, often kids are, if we're doing things the right way, or the way we're intending, or the way we're speaking about this, and helping kids reason through things and think through things using relationships and what they know, there isn't always a thing they did. There's a thinking through process. So when we always say show your work, I feel like are we sending the wrong message that there's always something to do? Whereas somebody might say, you know, if we're thinking about now that I'm standing here, I'm like, oh, I can't think of one example. But yeah, I can't think of one example. Maybe something will come to me, but probably after the fact. But I just, you know, I worry about the message it might send. Will it keep kids from relying on just using thinking and reasoning because they have to show that they've done something, right? Or are we allowing words and explanations to be the work that we're showing, because then they can explain that rather than like an actual process? If that makes sense.
you have thoughts about making like plus, minus, and equal signs to connect to real life and representations?
I know the equal signs, I usually talk about like a teeter-totter, right? Like, so try to like
Mm-hmm.
find a way to make that visual. And there are like the balances that will have that kind of.
Yes, I love those. Yeah, and I love number balances that have
Right.
the numbers 1 is to the inside and it goes out to the outside to 10. So you can literally be putting like a popsicle stick of a true false sort. So one of the major suggestions from the research of exploring equality is to have kids sort things are true or false. So having a popsicle stick that has like 2 expressions and you're deciding whether this is a true statement or not, then they can build it on the number balance and they can get that immediate feedback because the balance will literally be balanced. And that sends a message that an equal sign means the same as. That's not an action symbol. So very often we tend to put answers on the right-hand side of the equal sign. Blank plus this equals. And so they think equals means I have to do some math. But if you try to do like a 5 plus 5 equals something plus 2, they'll put a 10 in that missing spot because they're thinking 5 plus 5 equals, I must do this math and plunk it there. They're not thinking that relationally. So the more we can build the idea that and say the words same as when we're reading an equal sign, the more we can help the kids develop that understanding of the balance.
I've done, when you talk about the symbols in our room, we use the same as all the time. And if my kids, most of them will say equal means the same. I know, equal means the same. We'll take our hands and we'll measure them and show how they are the same when we're making an equal sign and talk about how they're equal is the same. Has helped a lot of talking. I'll usually grab markers or something to show about taking away for a minus sign and what we're doing when we add, or multiplication, how we're doing something again and again and again. Division I'll usually do for the symbol. If it's the traditional symbol, we'll take something I'm splitting it like above and below my arm just to make it visual for them and add some connection. But that's what they've really
aesthetic. Yeah.
Clicked onto the arms being the same size. Oh, okay. If that's what's worked best.
Yeah, super. And TJ mentioned in the chat also a clarifying of a same value as, right? Because a 5 plus 5 isn't the same as an 8 plus a 2 in terms of the numbers aren't similar. It's the value that is the same of both. So thank you for clarifying that, TJ. I think that's important. And I think a lot of our learners who are literal thinking will be confused. Like, what do you mean this isn't the same? It's the same value as. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I think especially with multiplication and arrays, it becomes, right, like a 3 by 4 is not the same as a 4 by 3, but they do have. And when you're talking about real life, like seats in a theater or at a table, or right, those are different things, but they do hold the same number of people or whatever the value is.
And also in other countries, like in the US, we call like 3 times 4 3 groups of 4. But in other countries, that's 3 4 times. Is the right? So there's no dictate that 3 times 4 the right answer is it's 3 groups of 4, but a 3 groups of 4 and a 4 groups of 3 looks different in context. But of course, a community or property, they have the same value, but we also need to be mindful. I've had teachers tell me, well, that was wrong because they didn't draw a picture for 3 times 4 of 3 groups of 4. And I'm like, because the answer key shows it that one way. It's like, but you know what? The US doesn't have the monopoly on 3 times 4 if it's not in context, right? If I give them a story problem of 3 bags of marbles, each having 4, and they draw me 4 bags, each having 3, well, then that's a difference. That's not okay. That's not what the context was. But just a straight naked number 3 times 4. We have no dictate of what that, means is the one right answer.
And I actually don't have this tool yet, believe it or not, but friends of ours do that number blocks balance thing where the middle thing, it's not a cruncher, but like if it doesn't do the equal sign, if one is greater than the next, it'll actually make the greater or less than, that sign or the symbol.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
So you're and they're the number blocks. It's a number block one.
Yeah.
Very cool. So if you haven't seen the videos of number blocks, they're my favorite videos for kids to see about math. Whenever I see one of their videos, I'm like, they know the research. They know the early numeracy research. But yeah, so having this little green monster guy and you're putting the numbers in there and how I love that, connecting that to the symbol. That's really
And there
fun.
are videos about the balance, and it's phenomenal.
Oh, are there? Oh,
Oh,
fun.
okay. Like my kindergarten teachers watch them, but I'm like, hey, 6th grade, here, come watch this.
Yeah,
They don't
I
like-
love it.
oh, it's
I
really good.
love it. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love it. And they are appropriate. There are some of them for older kids as well, like about square numbers and things. And I've had students share with me their thinking and I learned on number blocks. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool because that's something I wouldn't imagine you'd know. So yeah, it's wonderful. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. It is 9 o'clock. So thank you so much for joining in tonight. We only have one more meeting. We'll be doing the last 2 chapters of the book. And yes, it's been a wonderful journey. And those of you that are heading back to school right now, my heart is with you. I know the beginning of the year is so stressful and crazy. So good luck with everything as you're going into the new year. I know you want to sleep, Laura, right? For sure. But those of you that are like me in New England where we get to go back, school I don't have a job until August 27th. So I have more of a summertime coming up, which is nice. Yeah, I'll take it. All right, everyone. Have a great night. I'm having a 7:30 flight in the morning, so I got to go and pack. I haven't packed yet. So take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.